Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, a single father's ex-girlfriend abruptly leaves to attend school out of state, leaving him and their child. 2 years later, she returns wanting to reconcile but reveals she's living with another man and proposes an open relationship, which he rejects. Feeling betrayed, he ends the relationship, files for custody of their son, and focuses on providing stability. Despite challenges, he remains optimistic about finding a suitable role model for his son while prioritizing his own well-being. Now let's get into the story. I was a single father living with my elderly mother. My girlfriend left me and our child to find herself. She enrolled in a school out of state and lived with a roommate. She didn't really give me any indication that we'd be getting back together in the future. She did say she'd want to be in her son's life, but that would be later. I was shocked and basically begged her not to leave or do this. I asked her if she could do classes online, but she said it was the freedom and experience she needed in addition to the knowledge. 2 years after she left, I'd been with several women that never met my son. I wouldn't have them at my house. Instead, I had my sister come over to babysit. She felt bad enough that my ex abandoned us. Well, at least for a while. I was at work when I got a phone call that made my stomach flop. I stepped outside to answer it, and of course, it was my ex. She said she graduated and was moving back to our town. She said she knew it had been a while, so she didn't expect me to let her back into our lives easily. But she made it clear that she intended to win back my heart. I'll admit I was pretty happy. I thought the ordeal was over and we could have the life I thought we would. As soon as she got back, she had me over at her new place, and we made a nice reunion out of it. I went home on cloud 9 and started dreaming about her reuniting with our son. It happened sooner than it should have. Just a week after she got back, she saw him again. I wanted her back in our lives and I wanted her back in our house, but she said she wanted me to come over at least one more time before she started packing up. She added that she had something to tell me but thought it would be better in person. I was nervous at this point because I knew I let her back in my heart too fast. I started assuming the worst when I got there. She introduced her male friend roommate to me. Before I could even react to the fact she was living with some guy while I was sleeping with her, she started kissing him in front of me. I started yelling no and tried to turn around and leave, but they both grabbed me and made me sit on the couch. I was obviously terrified. I stayed still and pretended I would hear them out. She explained that since she found herself in college and that she needed me to at least consider the possibility of sharing her with AP, she said the idea excited her and this was a way we could keep the relationship alive. She added that I could have another woman too if I wanted. I thought of our son and felt so weird. I didn't want him to live in a house with his parents and their other lovers. This was never going to happen. I knew we were done because she was living and sleeping with this guy without telling me. She purposely tried to get me into something I would never have agreed to if she told me about it beforehand. As soon as there was enough space between me and them, I bolted out the door. She yelled after me and even tried to grab me, but I was gone. I got back to my boy and gave him a huge hug. I called the police to report how she held me there and threatened to drug me if I didn't stay. Filed for custody of our son that very same week and 1 month later, because my wife and AP were already broken up so she had no permanent address or place for him to live, the police report might have helped my case. I think it was pretty obvious that he should continue to live with me. Visitation was scheduled, but she doesn't always show up because it makes her mad that I'm ordered to be present and that I don't fall for her emotional tricks. Plus, every time she sees her son, she knows deep down that she messed up. I feel bad she's missing out on so much. Whenever she gets a job, child support will start coming out of her wages. I started dating again like I was before, but I've also made sure to start spending time with myself. I speak positively to myself and rest assured that when it's time for a woman to become a role model in my son's life, she will. Today's second story. In this story, about 25 years ago, during a military assignment, Opie's wife displayed behaviors consistent with infidelity, including distancing herself emotionally, accusing the OP of cheating, and exhibiting coldness. Despite attempts at reconciliation, suspicions lingered. Recently, a DNA test revealed the oldest child isn't biologically related to him, prompting a decision to divorce. She initially denied wrongdoing but eventually agreed to divorce terms. Communication has been limited to matters concerning their children and grandchildren. Now let's get into the story. About 25 years ago, I was in the military and was on a 2-year assignment from where my 38-year-old wife and I lived. We had been married about 20 years at that point, so I only came home on the weekends. After the first year, my wife started telling me to just stay there and not come home until my assignment finally ended. I refused and continued coming home on the weekends. She started treating me very coldly and not wanting to be intimate on those weekends. Then after another 3 or 4 months, she started randomly accusing me of cheating on her and continued being cold towards me. When my remote assignment ended, I was given orders overseas for 3 years, so I started preparing to rent out our house and move my wife and teenage sons. My wife constantly fought with me about it by saying she did not want to go and that I should go by myself. Also, during this transition, she was still cold and distant. My kids wanted to go, so she finally agreed to go. Once we got to the new location, she started constantly finding fault with everything with me and the location. So after 6 months there, I received permission to move her and my kids back home at the end of the year. The next 6 months were cordial at best. She was still cold, but allowed some intimacy about once a week. As the end of the year drew closer, she became excited about moving back and withdrew from me again. She stayed withdrawn from me for the last month or so. I took a 2-week leave. About a week after, she departed with the kids and went back home to help out. After about 3 hours of arriving, she was telling me to just leave and go back to my base. I stayed for about 10 days and returned to my base overseas. I was there for another 2.5 years. I would go home about every 4 months for 10 days and be treated the same way as I was the first time. We would be intimate twice in those 10 days, but I got a feeling she was doing it out of a feeling of obligation rather than desire. Also, she acted as if she wasn't really happy I was there and even stated she would like it better if I did not come back home until my time overseas was finished. For that remaining 1.5 years, she remained cold and distant. When I visited, and whenever I would call her to see if all was okay, if I mentioned I had gone to a cookout or bowling, she would accuse me of cheating and hang up. She would also constantly tell me everything was my fault and was always in her way of doing what she wanted. After I finally got transferred back, the coldness and distance remained. After 6 months back, I moved out. I stayed gone and even told her that if that is the way she was going to be, I wanted a divorce, so she agreed to marriage counseling. We went, but it was mostly a joke. She blamed her coldness and distance on me for not understanding her and what she wanted, so I moved back home and just ignored it. From then on, I left the military and got a job that required constant traveling. Now, 25 years later, we are both in our 60s and retired. I have a lot of time on my hands now and time for self-reflection. Hindsight is almost always 20/20. Now, I question her actions as I look back and analyze them using various article #S. I have read from people who analyze cheating spouses. My wife's actions back then fit the pattern given by other cheaters, even though I don't have the proof. Over the years since then, some of her friends and previous coworkers have made snide remarks about her possibly cheating during get-togethers while the alcohol flowed. I have mentioned it to her a few times. She never denies what they say, but responds by questioning their honesty or that they were probably doing it themselves. We still have an occasional blowout a few times. I have been so emotionally drained by always being who she lashes out at that I leave for a few hours just to get my composure back. When I come back, I tell her that I will leave. If that is what she wants, then she immediately states that she never cheated on me and has always been faithful. To recap, 25 years ago, my wife exhibited the cheating telltale symptoms listed by many professionals in the marriage counseling field. She pushed her spouse away, became distant, constantly found fault with her spouse, constantly denied cheating even though never accused of it, and constantly accused her remote spouse of cheating. Also, she constantly worked overtime on the weekends at her company, even though no one else did except her boss. This occurred for about 3 years. So now to my question or dilemma. We have been married for 45 years now. I am now questioning our entire married years. I can't bury it in the back of my mind anymore. Should I leave this sleeping dog alone? Or should I discuss it all with her and probably tear our marriage apart? A few of her coworkers, also Asian, are still around. They were also her friends. I have to be really careful because they stay in touch on Facebook. So I know a couple of the husbands and will possibly try to talk with them. The 2 oldest kids are already out of the house. The youngest lived in the video game world and never paid much attention to her comings and goings. But I will talk with them for a little update. So I tried to reach out to someone and was very careful in what I said. His wife immediately called my wife asking why we were separated and other BS. I am glad I did not actually ask my real questions. So this tells me I can't. I will just confront her directly and try to get her to believe I actually know something and not just suspicion. I need to get my physical living accommodations set up here in the US. First, next update. It has been a while since my original post and short update. I might have posted an update after the ones on the original post. So I confronted her. She denied what happened and kept asking who told me. She then just brushed it off as whoever it was must just be jealous of her. Even after I itemized her behavior back then in detail, she just continued to deny it. Then she started accusing me of not being nice back then and that I hurt her by not trusting her. She also kept wiping non-existent tears. As soon as I backed off, she just started saying that I had bad communication with her since then. I tried to get past it and took her on a Caribbean cruise, but I just don't have those loving feelings at this point. I don't wish her any misfortune, but just want to leave her now. My oldest son and his family decided to get ancestry DNA tests. They also told me the wife and I should, so I did, and I had my youngest do. It also turns out that my oldest son and my youngest son are only half-brothers. The DNA test also shows that my oldest son is not my biological son, but my youngest is. I never suspected this. My wife was pregnant for about a month before we met. 2.5 months into our relationship, she told me she was pregnant. I was 19, so I assumed it was mine. I was quite naive and stupid then, so my upbringing and my infatuation convinced me that I needed to marry her. I ended up raising 2 kids that weren't mine. She had a 4-month-old when we met and one that was. I love the 2 oldest just as much as my youngest. That will never change. I have not told the wife about this yet. I need to discuss it with my oldest son and then all 3 of them. Then I will also inform them that I'm divorcing their mother. Tattoo oldest will have to ask her who their biological fathers are because I have no clue. Then I will video chat with her and inform her of everything and my intentions to file. I strongly feel there was an emotional affair and a physical affair that happened 25 to 30 years ago. I most likely will never know for sure. What I do know though is that my oldest son isn't mine. Final update: at the end of my last update, I was going to tell my kids the truth and then the wife. I told my kids 5 days ago. It was pretty tough. All of my kids took it pretty well, but I think my oldest son may still be processing it. I do not know if their biological dads are the same individual or 2 different men. So the oldest child will get a DNA test. Also, I told both of them to ask their mom. Hopefully, she will remember and tell them. I decided to just text my wife instead of video chat. After 40+ years, I knew that would end badly. I would probably lose my composure and blow up, which wouldn't have helped. Also, I am pretty emotional over this. The text was short and to the point. The DNA test showed the oldest child is not mine and is only a half-sibling to the youngest. I stated I did not accept being lied to for 40+ years, that the marriage was over, and that I would be filing for divorce. She replied shortly after that. I did not respond to any of her texts. First, it was a misunderstanding about her lying to me and that she did not know. Then it was just us having bad communication. Then she was sorry that I had so much hate for her and said she would sign the papers and hoped I would find someone that make me happy. Next, she started blaming me for everything and said that I never cared and trusted her. All of her texting was over the span of about 2 days. I texted her that I would only text her regarding the kids' grandkids and the divorce from now on. I included the financial support she will get, and she asked if I would just send all of her belongings to her. Since then, it has been dead silence from her. She has contacted the 2 oldest about everything. I have not done the paperwork yet, but will do that shortly. That's all for now.